Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we have our first music video, music related video. In this one I will count down my favorite Stratovarius albums. Well, I will go from the worst to the best. This band has 15 albums in its discography, so quite a bit of albums. They have been around since the mid-1980s, and the first album came out in 1989, and their last one came out in 2015. And there is an upcoming what they call an intermission album, which will be followed by a full release at the beginning of next year, I believe. So before they release their next album, I wanted to do this countdown of my favorite albums. So for those of you who are not really familiar with this band, Stratovarius is a power metal band, a subgenre of heavy metal, and they are characterized by their neoclassical sound. They have their trademark is high-pitched voices, vocals, fast guitars, big guitar solos that are usually fast and with a lot of shredding, and there is also a lot of double bass pedal involved, so fast drums, powerful tracks usually, and ballads that have powerful vocals. So overall, pretty typical power metal band, but with a really distinct sound, with the neoclassical sound that they put. Alright, so let's get started. So on album number 15. So the album number 15 is called Stratovarius, so it's the eponymous album, and it's a little sad that the album with the name of the band is my least favorite, and I think overall many people feel that way. It's for me the only bad album of the band. Pretty much every other on the list I enjoy listening to, but this album doesn't have a lot of redeeming factor for me. It's in a very different style from the others. It doesn't have the classic sound of Stratovarius. Also the drum is unimpactful, and for me when I listen to an album, I really want the drums to be an important factor, since I play drums also. The vocals are not really high-pitched, just like the other times. There are some decent songs on it, like the song Fight. And there is also the song Maniac Dance, which is quite catchy. Again the dance, I do the maniac dance, just like a dance. And it had also a music video, I believe, associated with it. But otherwise, pretty much every other song I don't really like. Next one, number 14. On number 14 we have Fright Night, which came out in 1989 and which is the first album of the band. At this time it was the guitar player Timo Tolkki who was the vocalist also, and it was only a three-man band at the time. This album, even though it's on number 14, it's not an album that I dislike. It's not a bad album at all, but it still looks like the members were searching for the sound that they wanted to have, because some of the songs are really different from some others. You have some very powerful songs, like for example you have Future Shock, you have Fire Dance, which is an instrumental song that I really like. And you have also Witch Hunt. Witch Hunt is coming to town. But you have also more progressive songs, and those at the early time of Stratovarius I did not really enjoy. So my favorite track on the album is Future Shock. My least favorite one would be Darkness. Moving on, number 13. Number 13 we have Dream Space, which is the third album of the band. It's also the last album on which Timo Tolkki provides the vocals for. On this album he has some good vocals though. I do enjoy some of the vocals he provides for the band on this one, especially during the song Shattered and also in the song We Are the Future. This album is quite long for a Stratovarius album, and some of the songs I feel are dragging quite a little bit. Many of the songs are like 7 minutes long, and usually I don't really mind lengthy songs, but those, they feel even longer than that. Sometimes you have a 10-minute song that feel like it was 5. They are 7-minute songs that feel like 10. They are so slow, they develop really at a slow pace, and for me didn't quite make it. But I really do enjoy some of the faster tracks on the albums, like for example Hold On To Your Dream. Hold on to your dream, somewhere there's a beam of hope which is guiding your way through the dark. We Are the Future. And as I said earlier, Shattered. Which are probably my 3 favorite tracks from the album. Moving on number 12. So on number 12 we have the album Elysium, and many fans of the band will probably hate me for that, because Elysium I know is a really liked album, but for some reason I could never get into this album as a whole. There are some particular songs that I enjoy, but as a whole album I have trouble listening from start to end, and that's a little bit of a problem for me. So, like I said, some of the songs on it I really enjoy, but some others not quite. So, I don't know why. Because the title track, Elysium, which is, I think, like 18 minutes long, is a track I really enjoy. It's one of their masterpieces. And there's also some shorter tunes that I really like from the album. But as a whole, it's not one that I really enjoy. One of my favorite tracks on the album would be The Game Never Ends. And Infernal Maze. And I know the track Under Flaming Skies is considered as a really good one from them. I feel it's a little bit bland for my own taste though. Also, it's the last album in which the drummer Jörg Michael drums, and he's been a big influence on me when I play. Alright, so on number 11. So on the 11th spot of this list we have the album Nemesis. So on Nemesis you have the new drummer coming in, which is Rolf Pilve, and he is a really talented drummer, quite young also, and he does some really good work in Winter Sun right now, which is another one of my favorite bands. On this album, the reason I don't really particularly like it, the sound is quite different from precedent albums which were all really well received. Before that you had the Elysium album, Polaris, you have the Stratovarius album, which I talked earlier that was quite bad, but before that you had a bunch of really good albums, and this one they seemed like they wanted to change a little bit the sound and experiment, And for me, some of those experiments didn't really work out. They had some weird keyboard parts, kind of like they wanted to add some almost dubstep elements in some of the songs, and for me it didn't quite work for my taste. Like for example in the song Halcyon Days, they have a big electronic part that I did not really enjoy. But as a whole, it's not a bad album. It's still on number 11, so it's still on the bottom, but it's not a bad album by any means. My favorite track from the album is definitely Unbreakable, and by the way, in Unbreakable there's probably one of, if not my favorite riff ever from the band, and it's one of my favorite metal riffs overall. It's so good, and we'll take a look at it right now. Alright, so that was it. This riff for me is really good, but still the album doesn't quite make it higher on the list. Another song I really like from it is Abandon. Alright, so let's move on number 10. So on number 10 we've got the album Twilight Time. This album is the second album of the band, and it's a really big upgrade from Fright Night for me. This one has better sound, and the style is more consistent throughout the album. The power metal sound starts showing up more and more. The album is quite short, and I would have loved to see more of it, definitely. The album is quite melodic, and the sound, like I said, is more polished than in Fright Night. The production seemed a little better. Still, the sound could be quite better. It's not perfect, but it's in their early days, so I'm cutting them a little bit of slack for that. But there are only 8 tracks on it. Definitely could have had more. Some of my favorite songs on the album are Out of the Shadows, Madness Strikes at Midnight, and Break the Ice. Moving on to the album number 9. So on number 9 we have Fourth Dimension. This album is the first one where Timo Tolkki does not provide the vocals. So he wanted to have an easier time playing guitar, since singing and playing guitar at the same time seems pretty difficult, but he was a little tired of that, I guess, and he wanted to concentrate more on the guitar work. And you can really see on this album that the guitars are getting a little bit more complex. And it's also the first album where the other Timo of the band, Timo Kutsipelto, is singing, and his voice is a big upgrade on Tolkki's. Don't get me wrong, Tolkki's vocals were pretty good, but Kutsipelto's vocals are better in my opinion. So this album is the 4th one of the band. And this album still has some progressive elements in it, and some of the songs still don't quite have a big of an impact on me, which is why the album is low on the list. Some of my favorite songs on it are Against the Wind, the instrumental track Stratovarius, and also Twilight Symphony, which, as the name suggests, really has some big neoclassical symphonic elements in it, which I really like. Now moving on to number 8. So on number 8 we have Elements Part 2. As the name suggests, it's the second part of a 2-part album, and for this one it's a downgrade from the first part. Its predecessor was better, and you will see later on the list some of the reasons why I think so. But on this album, most of the songs are slower than on Elements Part 1, which is not always a bad thing, but on this one I feel that the guitar work is not as good and the drums are less impactful. So for these reasons I like it a little less than Elements Part 1. There are still really good songs on the album that I do enjoy, which are I Walk to My Own Song, I'm Still Alive, and also the ballad Liberty. Sun is shining, sky is so blue. Next, album number 7. So on the 7th place of the list we have the album Polaris. So on this album is the first one where we don't have Timo Tolkki on the guitars, and he's replaced by Matthias, and I don't remember the last name, so I'm really sorry. But Matthias is a really talented guitar player, and the guitars on the album are really good. You can really see right off the bat with the track Deep Unknown that the band is still using their power metal sound and a good variation of guitars and keyboard, and they have not lost their touch, even if Tolkki is not there, that's for sure. Even though most of the album is to my liking, there are once again some songs that I cannot get into, which is why the album is placed on number 7. They are not bad songs, but when I listen to them often I will skip, so it's not an album that I have an easy time listening from the beginning to the end, but it does have a lot of solid elements. Like I said on the song Deep Unknown, I really do enjoy the song Blind. Higher We Go. And Forever Is Today. Moving on, number 6. So on the album number 6 we have Destiny. The titular song of the album, Destiny, is a 10-minute piece that, unlike some of the other tracks I talked about earlier in the video, where I said that some tracks were 7 minutes long sometimes and they felt like they were 10, this one is a 10-minute track that you can listen from the beginning to the end and you would still want some of it. It's divided in a few parts, and all of the parts are perfect and blend well into each other. Then you have a bunch of really good faster paced songs, really good power metal songs, like for example you have Rebel. No Turning Back. And you have also SOS, which is one of the singles of the album, I believe, which is also quite a catchy track that is easy to listen to as well. The album has a few ballads in it. I don't enjoy all of them, which is why it's placed on number 6 and not higher. But 4,000 Rainy Nights is one I really do enjoy. Let's move on to number 5. So on number 5 we have Elements Part 1. As I said earlier, this one I feel is way better than the successor Element Parts 2. It has right off the bat one of the catchiest songs of the band and one of their most successful in Eagle Heart. And the lyrics, many people can identify to them as well. It also has some of the fastest and most powerful songs the band has ever put out in Learning to Fly, Find Your Own Voice, and also the instrumental Stratovarius. Some of the slower tracks also have a big impact on the album, like for example Soul of a Vagabond is a pretty long track, and it has a kick-ass guitar solo in it. If you have the chance to take a look, you definitely should. And the song Fantasia also is definitely one you should look at. Also on this album, the vocals are really pushed, probably to the highest that Codespelto has ever done on any of the Stratovarius records. Just for example, listen to this part of the song Learning to Fly. Moving on to number 4. On number 4 we have the latest album of the band, Eternal. And for me, I really expected big things from this album because the one just before, Nemesis, as I said earlier, experimented on a lot of sounds, and some of them I liked, some of them I didn't. So I was really curious if they were going to do the same thing with Eternal. And to my, maybe not to my surprise, but to my enjoyment, they really came back to their roots and to the sound that made their greatest album so great. So they really returned to the powerful, fast tracks that they are known for, and also lyrics that you can really identify with, especially in the song Shine in the Dark. The opening track, My Eternal Dream, is one that when I heard it first I really thought, hey, this album is going to kick ass. Like in the first 30 seconds of the song, I already knew I would like the album right off the bat. This song is really the perfect opener you could get, and it's followed up by Shine in the Dark, which is one of my favorite songs of the band overall. Throughout the whole album, the only song I would skip is Lost Without a Trace. I do not really enjoy this song, but all the other ones I can listen to and I will love them, so that's why this album is so high on my list. But my favorites from the album are definitely My Eternal Dream, Shine in the Dark, Feeding the Fire, and In My Line of Work. Moving on to number 3. So finally in the top 3, so on this spot we have Visions. As I mentioned earlier, Visions is an album that was really well received and have some of the best tracks. This album is probably as good as neoclassical metal can get. The keyboards are really taking a big place, and it's in a good way. And the harmony between the guitars and the keyboards is pretty much perfect for me. So and the drums are also powerful, and the whole thing together mixed up is doing a really good result for me. So it's an album I always like listening to, and this album has some like I said, has some of the band's most memorable song and most popular ones. Like for example, you have The Kiss of Judas, Paradise, you have the instrumental track Holy Light, and of course you have Black Diamond. Even the slower tunes from the album are really good for me. Like for example, you have Coming Home, and Before the Winter. Alright, so next, number 2. Infinity! Alright, so on this spot we have Infinite, and what to say about it other than it's one of my favorite power metal albums like ever. This one has a big nostalgic feeling for me because it's with this album that I discovered Stratovarius, and I can listen to it from the first track to the last one without skipping anything. Every track is really good on it. I feel it has a good amount of faster pieces, and also the slower ones really bring something to the table. Like for example, in the song A Million Light Years, there is probably my favorite guitar solo of the whole band. It's so great. It lasts about 1 minute, but the melody is great. It's not too fast, not too slow. It has different patterns. I won't make you listen to it all, it would be too long, but you definitely should take a look. This album also has probably the band's most successful song in Hunting High and Low. I am hunting high and low, diving from the sky above. The fast tracks, like I said, there are a good amount, and they are pretty much all pretty catchy. The drums are powerful. I really enjoy listening to them, and the guitar work is phenomenal for me as well. My favorite tracks from the album are probably Hunting High and Low, Mother Gaia, I have seen the light, it came into my life, there's no second chance, Phoenix, Millennium, and Freedom. So there are quite a bit of tracks that I consider my favorites, but it's because there's so many awesome songs on this album that it's hard to choose a favorite. So now, let's go on to see number 1. Alright, so number 1 we've got Episodes. So on this album you have what you would call the dream team. So you have the lineup that lasted the longest that Stratovarius had. In its history, Stratovarius has had many lineup changes, but this one from 1996 with Episode until the album Stratovarius in 2005, you didn't have a lineup change, and the albums between then were the best that the band has put out. So, or pretty much the best. And in 1996 with this album you have the appearance of Jörg Michael on the drums, which is one of my favorite drummers, and you have Jens Johansson on the keyboard, and it really shows. Jens Johansson is an incredible keyboardist, and his playing alongside Timo Tolkki is really making a big difference in the band, and the neoclassical sound is really coming together really nicely. Like I said, Jörg Michael is making his appearance with the band. The drumming becomes more powerful, and it's really a power metal drums, just like I love, and it's getting a little less progressive. From now on, with Episode, the sound of Stratovarius is less progressive overall. There will be some progressive songs, but they will mostly be fast tracks with, like I said in the beginning, with their trademark sound of fast guitars, powerful drums, and high-pitched vocals. The perfect example of the album for a good harmony between the guitars and the keyboards is in the instrumental Stratosphere. So take a listen at this little portion to really hear what I mean. So this song is probably the best instrumental piece that the band has done. So on this album, the opening track, Father Time, really sets the tone. It really shows you where the band is going with this album. It's fast, the vocals are pushing Cotipelto to what it seems like his limit, but as we see on Elements Part 1, he can go even higher, but still the vocals are really pushing his skills. The ballad Forever on this album is probably my favorite from the band overall as well. There are many other notable songs on the album, like for example Nighttime Eclipse, Tomorrow, Will the Sun Rise, and obviously let's not forget Speed of Light, which is one of every Stratovarius fan's favorite. Alright, so there you have it, my list of the worst to the best album of Stratovarius. So make sure that to leave a comment to tell me if you're a fan of Stratovarius. Tell me which are your favorite picks, and just leave me some feedback. It's always appreciated, and I'll see you guys next time.